A wind like a razored whisper slid across the shivering sea, stirring the moon-silvered crests into crooked fangs. Beneath that thin mist, the water itself seemed to forget it was liquid. It stiffened, thickened, dimpled with budding frost. No gulls dared cry. In the distance, Eastwatch by the Sea's lanterns guttered against the unnatural night, their yellow throats strangled one by one as if an unseen hand pinched every flame. Far below those ramparts, an old fisherman named Auric Roland, hunched in his skiff, hands raw upon an oar that refused to bite. He smelled salt, rot, something ancient. The dark ahead rippled, churned, and then the sea floor rose. It was not sand that surfaced, but bones. Ribs of whales, hulls of wrecked cogs, the pale branches of drowned pines lifted by ice, thickening upward like a pane of window glass grown from the deeps. Eric watched his skiff grind against the newborn shelf. Behind him, a bell tolled wildly. Guards upon the wall shouted in tongues he did not recognize. Yet Eric understood the fear. He leapt, too slow. Something cold and slender closed around his ankle, dragging him down to where the water hardened. The sea swallowed his scream and froze it mid-breath. Nothing living witnessed his last breath, but something not quite dead did. The Night King, astride the shattered breastbone of an ancient leviathan, raised from the abyss, tilted his crowned head, and listened to the stillness he had wrought. Vazirian's corpse-blue eyes glimmered above, wings beating air into brittle shards. Each slow stroke doused more starlight. At a silent command, spears of hoarfrost hissed outward along the shallows, knitting a path southward, a road of ice winding between broken islands and lonely capes, all the way to the mouth of Blackwater Bay. The dead marched. They came without banners, without drums, without even the echo of their own footfalls, for the ice drank every sound. First walked the drowned, sailors whose beards still dripped seawater, their uniforms of Myrish red or Pentoshi blue, reduced to salt-stiff rags. Next shuffled the wildlings taken at Hardhome, mothers clutching infants that would never cry, giants whose clubs were rime-coated tree trunks. The fresh whites of Eastwatch's garrison formed a shield wall behind, black cloaks now white with frost. At their heart glided the White Walkers, armored in mirrored plates that refracted the moon into 1,000 fatal crescents. Their blades emitted no steam. The night was already theirs. 3 days south, King's Landing baked beneath a languid little sun that promised an early spring. Dornish lemons perfumed the air along the street of silk. In the Red Keep's gardens, the last of winter's snowdrop blossoms nodded, oblivious. On the ramparts above Maegor's Holdfast, Sir Jaime Lannister leaned against a merlon warm from sunlight and stared eastward where the horizon blurred. A haze hung above the water, and an old habit quivered in his sword arm. Battle was coming, but he could not say why. More of Qyburn's wildfire smoke, no doubt. Cersei said beside him. Golden hair coiled tight as a crown, she surveyed the emptiness with a lioness contempt. Euron's fleet will sail soon, and I want the bay cleared of refuse. Send a raven to the harbor master. Jaime grunted, yet his flesh crawled. He had fought in northern snows, marched through summer storms, but never had the sea looked wrong. A smear of pale gray mottled the blue, spreading like spilled milk. When he blinked, it seemed to advance a handspan. Within the bowels of the Red Keep, Maester Balabar held his palm above a brazier and shivered. The temperature has fallen 4 degrees in as many hours, he told Qyburn in a voice made brittle by fear. If this continues, even the Blackwater could glaze overnight. Qyburn's good eye gleamed. So we test another hypothesis. Fetch the prisoners. I will examine how quickly flesh calcifies when submerged in chilled brine. Balabar swallowed noisily. Your Grace must be informed. Her Grace trusts that I keep the blood flowing. Hers, at least. The rest is spare. Along the alleyways of Fleabottom, nightly gossip turned to frost-bitten fingers and water buckets, skimming ice at dawn. Cobblers' sons broke slivers from curbside puddles. Shrieking at the cold blue shards that refused to melt upon their tongues. In the Sept of Baelor, acolytes found the holy water rims frozen. Rumors blew west to the narrow terraces of Visenya's hill and whispered through the small courts. A curse, a Targaryen spell, a northern storm riding some invisible wind. Yet the Red Keep's court remained deaf. Its courtiers plotted marriages, bribes, executions. The Golden Company drilled upon the Roseruad, practicing shield wall formations meant to face unsullied spears. They laughed when their helms frosted during midday exercises, thinking it a trick of altitude. 4 nights later, a black galley drifted up the Blackwater Rush. No banner flew. A single lantern bobbed at its prow. Dock guards hailed and received silence. When they leapt aboard, they found no crew. Only footprints rimed in frost leading below. The first man down the companionway slipped on a glaze of ice. He landed upon corpses arranged in neat rows, each sailor's slit open sternum to navel, their blood crystallized into dark rubies. At the center knelt the captain, eyes still wide, his severed tongue resting in his frozen palm. A message carved into his forehead read, in old tongue sigils none could decipher. The sea remembers. By sunrise, the galley had vanished, drifting back downriver upon an outgoing tide that steamed where it touched morning warmth. Dockmasters shrugged it off as pirate mischief. The city watch doubled patrols and cursed Euron Greyjoy for emboldening corsairs, never seeing how the river itself cooled beneath their very noses. North of King's Landing, on the King's Road's muddy spine, a lone raven smashed against the hood of a supply wagon bound for the capital. The driver, a boy of 13, pried out the bird with shaking fingers. Its wings were sheathed in frost, eyes void. The parchment lashed to its leg could not be freed until the boy warmed the knot over a lantern. The ink within had ruptured from frozen blood. Only 3 words remained legible. They are seaborne. The boy showed the message to every checkpoint. None understood. When, 2 days later, he finally surrendered it to a bored captain of the city watch at the mud gate, that captain laughed, pocketed the slip, and forgot it over ale by dusk. The parchment lay in gutter water that hardened, cracked, and was swept, shards and all, into the Blackwater. Viserions' wings beat ice into the clouds above Crackclaw Point. Each stroke flung a shock of rime that fell like dust upon the tangled pines below, turning that coastal belly white. Wolves fled inland. Boars froze under a single breath. At the tip of Maidenpool's breakwater, 4 lighthouse wardens watched a fog bank slide across the bay faster than any tide. They rang a warning bell until their hands split, but no answer came save the gong's hollow echo. When the fog touched their tower stone, it crawled upward like lichen. By the 3rd peal, the bell froze in mid-swing. None lived to ring a 4th. The Night King glided north of the tower atop a crust of ice that thickened beneath each step. He did not hurry. Eternity bends for those who command death. Behind him trudged hundreds of new recruits. Fishermen from salt pans, waiters from the quiet isle, the drowned wardens of Maidenpool's beacon. Their eyes, once brown or blue or green, now matched the gray-white of the sea road beneath them, indistinguishable from the ice they walked. On Dragonstone, Tyrion Lannister read a raven scroll while pacing the painted table room alone. Outside, black waves battered the cliffs, but the chill threading his breath did not belong to ordinary winter. The scroll bore Stannis Baratheon's broken sigil, repursed by Davos Seaworth, now hand to Queen Daenerys. Unnatural ice sighted 10 leagues from Storm's End. The sea freezes faster than ships can outrun. Warmer air flees before it. Send dragons. Tyrion poured wine, found it half slush in the flagon. He cursed softly. My brother will think this another trick, he muttered, though no one answered. Jon Snow had ridden north to Winterfell with Queen Daenerys, and her dragons to treat with Sansa and the Lords of the Vale. Dragonstone's garrison lay thin, its hearths cold. Tyrion dipped a quill, but paused. A second raven lay bound beside the first, its parchment mildly warm as if it had flown through summer. 7 dark shapes upon the sea road, tall as towers, clad in glass that drinks the moon. It bore the broken seal of Eastwatch. The wall should be our shield, Tyrion thought, yet the wall is silent. At Winterfell, Jon Snow ended training with the young men of Widow's Watch earlier than usual. Horses stamped with restless nerves. The kennel's hounds would not settle. Ravens clawed at dead mice they refused to eat. Sansa stood upon a parapet, draped in white wolf fur, watching the northern sky dull. No snow fell, but the world felt empty, like a room after all torches are snuffed. Letters arrived from White Harbor reporting dead cod, floating belly up in harbors crusted with early ice. No ordinary freeze, they said. The water froze from below. A storm, suggested Maester Walken, though his voice quavered. Or something worse, Sansa replied, and remembered the cold of Ramsay Bolton's kennels, the smell of winter mixed with fear. That night she dreamed of the crypts again. Her mother's stone hands cracked, her brother's effigies bleeding frost. In King's Landing, the river froze. It happened at dusk. Candlelight wavered on every sill along the mud gate as citizens gathered to gawk. A skin of ice crawled upriver like a serpent, covering pilings, struts, barges. Flowers of rime blossomed on hulls. Rats fled squealing across gangplanks only to skid, legs scrambling, on the crystal slickness. By full dark, the Blackwater Rush had become a road of silver glass, silent except for the shifting groan of timber hulls locked in place. Cersei ordered a demonstration. She rode with Sir Gregor and 100 gold cloaks onto the river itself, hooves clattering as though upon marble. Crowds cheered her bravery. She smiled, hearing prophecy fracture underfoot. But further downstream, beyond the bend where no torchlight shone, a different procession tread the same frozen path, announced, unseen, inevitable. The first watchers to spot them were children skating near the king's gate. They thought the approaching figures knights in pale armor, until the leading rider's mount collapsed mid-gallop without a sound, disintegrating into shards that slithered forward, reforming into a wolf with eyes of shattered sapphire. The children fled. One lost her shoe. When she paused to snatch it, the wolf stepped upon her shadow, and she became part of its pack, small fingers already graying. Qyburn's ravens never returned that night. Silence echoed through the rookery like a dirge. In the throne room beneath sconces that hissed with cold draught, Cersei sat rigid upon the iron throne, while Jaime studied the frost climbing the walls. Even with braziers raging, vapor puffed from every mouth. Qyburn entered, white breath swirling. "I fear your grace, our enemy is not Euron's brother nor Daenerys Stormborn. It is death itself." Jaime's laugh sounded hollow. "Death has no fleet." "Perhaps death does not need one," Qyburn answered, pulling a parchment hewn of patched human skin. Northern maps annotated with frost paths, dates, the predicted sweep of cold curling toward Blackwater Bay like a talon. Observe the rate of spread measured from Maidenpool to Duskendale. By dawn the ice will reach the harbor mouth. By tomorrow evening every cistern in King's Landing will freeze. Water may freeze, soldiers and walls do not. Cersei said, though her calm faltered. Qyburn bowed. "I will pray it is so, your grace. But pray harder, that the fire your father stored beneath the city still obeys a living spark." Though beneath the city, the Night King walked unseen through catacombs long abandoned. The tunnels had once borne Baratheon smuggling, Tyrion's secret drains, Blackfire pretenders. Now they bore silence. Whites peeled away from him at each intersection, stalking upward through cracks in masonry. They exhaled cold into cellars, privies, wine stores. Wine crystallized. Bread crumbled beneath rime. Mice turned to blue glass statues mid-squeak. In the great sept of Baelor's ruins, the Night King paused. Here wildfire had once consumed flesh and stone, the green fire scorching even memory. Yet beneath the embers lay bones no pyre could sanctify. He raised a palm. Tendrils of night reached down, twining around ribs charred black, around skull fragments still etched with faith-militant scar sigils. Stone dust quivered, swirling like snow. A shape took form, an eyeless giant in cracked plate embossed with 7-pointed stars. The dead High Septon arose, cowl aflame with cold blue light, and fell into step behind his new lord. Viserion screamed overhead, a sound like glaciers fracturing. Stone quaked. Somewhere in the Red Keep, panes shattered. Jaime jerked, hearing a dragon's cry distorted, robbed of life. He tasted ash, though no fire burned. The bay's surface exploded outward as a wave of cold crashed into the river's mouth. Ice buckled, splintered into flows that jostled like drunk soldiers, then stilled to a single sheet so clear one could spy fish frozen mid-turn. Upon that terrible mirror the army of the dead advanced. An endless pale ribbon, torches of blue fire flickering upon swords of teased glass. At their center paced the Night King, cloak unfurling like the banner of some forgotten empire that never knew warmth. King's Landing's bells screamed. Gold cloaks swarmed the walls. Archers loosed through chattering teeth, watched arrows fissure the ice, watched undead climb the shafts as though they were rungs upon a ladder. Crossbow bolts snapped against armored walkers, glancing away like pebbles on ironwood. The first wight to reach the city walls was the little girl who had lost her shoe. She climbed a drainpipe, oblivious to broken nails, and opened the postern gate from within before Gregor Clegan's sword could find her. She laughed, a sound of cracking ice, as the dead poured through behind her. On Dragonstone, Tyrion's quill snapped. He strode to the courtyard where the last of Daenerys' scribes kept a dying brazier. "Rouse the garrison," he commanded. "Every ship sails for King's Landing at once." "No ships can sail," a knight replied, pointing seaward. The black water's freeze had reached the sea's edge. Even Black Betha lay imprisoned in a cradle of ice, its sails limp. Beyond, the dark horizon churned with new storm clouds. No, with Viserion sweeping wings, freezing the very air miles distant. Tyrion closed his eyes, seeing wildfire pots beneath the Red Keep, seeing his sister's pride, seeing a city of million souls held hostage by an enemy immune to fear. A terrible calculation unfurled in his mind, one whose sum equaled green fire and ashes, and the final gamble of a desperate queen who would burn her own realm to deny it to her foes. He wondered whether death felt regret. Jon Snow rode through Wintertown at breakneck pace toward the Godswood, where he found Bran beneath the great heart tree. Snowflakes that were not snow drifted in the air, tiny specks of frost materializing from nothing. Bran opened pale eyes glowing faint green. "They have broken the river," Bran said, voice distant. "The wall still stands, but its purpose is undone." "Then it's King's Landing that must be warned," Jon answered. "Warned?" Bran's wheelchair drifted an inch as if a wind pushed it. "There is no time for warnings. By sunrise, the dead will dance in the Red Keep. By nightfall, they will wear the skins of kings." "Damn no." Jon felt the world tilt. "Dragons can still fly." "Yes," Bran said, "but which fires burn hotter, the breath of life, or the fire we keep chained in vaults? Someone in King's Landing will light the wrong flame." Jon spun, shouting orders. Ravens launched from Winterfell by dozens, but the cold caught many mid-sky. They fell like stones within sight of the battlements. Cersei stood upon the Red Keep's walls, hair whipping, eyes fever-bright. Below, Gregor Clegane hacked legions that refused to remain cleft. The Golden Company's elephants panicked upon the frozen river, trumpeting before falling to knees that shattered, entombing themselves knee-deep. Harry Strickland died beneath his own mount, crushed then raised seconds later. Trumpet call turned to shriek. Maester Balabar begged retreat to the upper terraces. Qyburn proposed triggering the caches under the city gates, sealing the enemy outside. Jaime shook Cersei's arm. "Wildfire here will burn living and dead alike. Listen to me." "Listen," she hissed. "I have listened to ravens, to maesters, to gravediggers wearing iron masks. No more. This is my throne, my city. If I cannot keep it, no one shall." Jaime saw madness kindle behind her pupils like wildfire seeking air. Below, the Night King paused amid the melee. His eyes found Cersei's across the gulf of wall and courtyard. Time slowed. Snow suspended mid-fall. Jaime's breath froze, half-exhaled. In that stillness, hearts recognized a power older than oaths. The Night King lifted a single finger. Viserion dove from cloud cover, jaws wide. The scream preceding his frostfire tore roof tiles free like chaff, surged toward the battlements, and shattered against an unseen dome of green-tinged air. From deep within the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the Red Keep, Wildfire sensed its sibling flame and answered. A pulse of emerald rose beneath the courtyard, pushing back the ice breath with a shriek of boiling stone. Jets of molten brick whirled skyward. Sculpted gargoyles dissolved into slag. Whites within the courtyard erupted, showering crystalline shards. But the fire could not choose its path. It found cracks dug by old dragonfire, poured along forgotten smugglers' paths, seeped into cisterns where ice had thinned mortar. The ground laced itself with neon veins. Jaime's sword, still in scabbard, warm to scorching, he smelled leather burn. Cersei's smile broadened. Let him feel what dragonfire truly is. Jaime caught her arm. If the wildfire ignites the vaults. I know, she whispered. Below, the Night King lowered his hand. The frost breath ceased. He studied the gout of emerald flame consuming the courtyard, listened to the hiss of ice turning to steam. He stepped forward into rising green light. Where it licked his boots, the fire dulled, colors draining away until even wildfire froze solid, a sculpture of translucent jade. The Night King walked on, leaving a wake of silent, glassy towers. Wildfire turned to ice. Jaime felt the blood leave his face. Cersei's nails dug crescents into his arm. Qyburn murmured something between prayer and hysteria. Fire that cannot burn. No living alchemist could understand. Along the docks, thousands pressed against the frozen river's edge, praying to any god, clawing at shutters of homes already abandoned. Mothers begged for boats that could not float. Men hammered at ice that would not crack. When the first whites reached the Iron Gate, the press of bodies swallowed sound. People found themselves staring into faces they recognized. Dockmates, neighbors, a child thought lost hours earlier, now returned with eyes alight in cold glory. Recognition stilled their hands just long enough for death to claim them without struggle. The army grew. Across the city, every candle guttered at once. Darkness rolled through streets like ink poured from the sky. Only the Red Keep remained lit, its towers shimmering in lurid emerald and pale sapphire. Two fires, life and death, fought for the heart of the capital. And in that hour before dawn, as bells cracked from their yokes and ravens froze upon their perches, Tyrion Lannister reached the Gate of the Gods astride a wind-lame horse. He saw the city's outline aflame with green tongues and ghost-blue halos. He saw the river shine harder than any silver coin. Of it all, a dragon made of night circled the Red Keep, exhaling storms that turned fire to statues. Tyrion slid from the saddle and knelt in slush that had once been grass. Gods forgive me, he muttered, though he doubted any listen tonight. Behind him, sails cracked. Shards of ice breaking free as Davos Seaworth's motley fleet forced anchor along the frozen shore. Men leapt, swords drawn, only to feel the chill bite through wool and mail alike. Davos joined Tyrion, lips blue. 7 hells, he whispered. It's come to this. Tyrion nodded. And this is only the beginning. We must find my brother. And the queen, either queen, before they light what wildfire remains. Damn. Davos spat, saliva turning white before it touched ground. Lad, look around. I'd sooner swim the Mander than walk that road. We have no choice, Tyrion said. He straightened, feeling the weight of every sin ever forged under Lannister gold. The sea is closed, the sky is death, the ground is treason. Only forward remains. In the crypts beneath Winterfell, Bran's eyes rolled white. On the surface of his mind, giant weirwood roots formed a cage of memory and time. He searched for branching futures, but found too many snuffed before ignition. The ink upon fate spilled everywhere, rewriting itself with each breath of frost. Yet one thread still burned faint, a dragon, living, a queen, forgiving, a fire, born of mercy, not wrath. He sent a last whisper southward on winds that might still carry words through ice. Daenerys, fly far, fly low, burn the ice that cannot freeze. But whether the message reached her or was devoured by the storm riding Viserion's wake, Even the three-eyed raven could not tell. Beneath a sky wreathed in frost and wildfire smoke, the Night King ascended Aegon's high hill. He paused at the base of the Iron Throne's steps, listening to swords embedded centuries' deep murmur of blood and conquest. Each step, he took iced metal until the ragged blades became sculptures of crystal, reflecting the green inferno outside like a carnival of dying light. He stood before the throne of men with no heartbeat to quicken, no breath to mist. And as the first rim of sun edged the horizon, pale, frightened, impotent, the dead king reached out to claim a chair once forged by dragonfire. A clang rang out. Not trumpets, but steel. Jaime Lannister stood upon the landing, sword drawn, golden hand catching dawn's dead light. "If you want her throne," he said through lips that stuck, "you will step over the Kingslayer." The Night King tilted his head, curious as a god contemplating ants. Behind him, Viserion's shadow fell through the broken ceiling like a cloak. On the parapet outside, Cersei pressed a hand to a lever poised to loose the last cache hidden beneath the throne room. Flames licked her cheeks, wildfire trembling, uncertain. Qyburn fled down corridors already icing. Somewhere far below, Tyrion shouted her name, lost in labyrinthine echoes. Fire. Ice. The fragile heartbeat of morning. The Night King's hand closed into a fist, and the city drew a single breath that tasted of smoke, of snow, of everything that ever lived and ever died, held it, and waited. Kay. Jaime's breath scraped his throat like a blade drawn dull. Frost feathered his lashes, moth-white, brittle. Longclaw's twin, Oathkeeper, glimmered in his living hand, Valyrian steel aching for heat that did not exist. He tightened numb fingers round the grip and felt the old wound where hand met golden prosthesis throb, as if bone remembered what metal never could: fear. Across the span of cracked marble, the Night King regarded him with an unreadable stillness, crown of black ice antlers haloed by spoil light. No words lay behind that frozen mask, no mercy, no recognition of challenge, only arithmetic, one living man, one blade, one heartbeat left to hush. Jaime advanced a measured half-step. He forced his left boot to rise, set, grind for purchase on a floor slick with rime. "If kings must die," he murmured, "better by kingslayers than beasts." The Night King raised two fingers. Wind screamed through the sundered windows and shards. Splinters of columns, flakes of wildfire glass, spun like a swarm of razors. Jaime twisted, cape whipping, blade flickering in arcs that shaved whirling edges away. Each parry rang a note of silver pain along his arm. Sparks hissed where steel met crystal. He felt blood warm his sleeve, saw droplets freeze mid-fall and clink to the stones. The maelstrom stilled as swiftly as it had risen. Jaime's heartbeat hammered in his ears. Between pulses, he heard the deep groan of the Red Keep's bones adjusting to unnatural cold. Beyond the shattered arch behind him, Cersei's lever loomed, emerald fire guttering in tremulous veins through the ironwork. She kept her palm poised above the trigger plate, knuckles white, lips parted in a lioness snarl. Every breath she drew steamed around her cheeks. Viserion's shadow swept the throne room ceiling. A wingtip tore more roof away. Rubble cascaded. The dragon settled upon the courtyard parapet outside, skeletal frames silhouetted against a dawn the color of dying embers. Frostfire dribbled between cracked fangs, etching black runes in the air. Jaime sensed motion. Not the Night King but wights flooding through fissures at the hall's base. They scaled tapestries as if drawn by threads, spilled down balconies, slithered across pillars headfirst, eyes blazing blue, faces half-known, lords of the Reach fallen at Blackwater, sandaled septus from distant Gulltown, gaunt sailors whose jams bore tattooed Kraken sigils, wove toward him in silence. He braced. "Cersei, run," he said, scarcely louder than thought. She did not. Golden curls clung to her temples like frozen vines dairy. "Our child will never breathe the air they bring," she whispered. and Jaime's heart quailed at the madness in her gaze. The certainty that all who lived would die, so death could be owned. The Night King stepped forward. Jaime lunged. Oathkeeper sang through the chill, edge wreathed in brief steam where it parted air supercooled beyond reason. The blade met the Night King's wrist, clanged, rebounded. Ice armor parted not. Instead the steel chipped, a thin crescent shaving away into shimmering dust. Jaime recoiled in disbelief. Valyrian steel was forged to bite, yet here it skipped like pewter on granite. The Night King regarded the nick upon his gauntlet. Then Jaime. And a noise like cracking lakes issued. Laughter made of winter's splinter. He raised his palm again. Marble erupted beneath Jaime's boots. Spears of ice lunged upward, catching cloak, pinning fabric to shoulders, skewering masonry. Jaime twisted clear, severing his own cape, but shards traced bloody ribbons along his thigh. Heat drained from muscle instantly, the leg seized. He gritted teeth, balancing on one knee. Blade level, frost spidered from the wound across his greaves, sealing iron joints. The Night King closed distance, each footfall whisper light. In one ghost swift motion, he seized Jaime's throat. Fingers burned with cold beyond agony. Breath lodged in lungs. Jaime slashed reflexively, aiming for the arm. But Oathkeeper struck unyielding cuirass and shattered along half its length, fragments chittering across the floor. Valyrian steel, broken. Jaime's mind reeled. He felt consciousness slide toward the abyss on a glaze of terror. Then Cersei screamed. She hurled herself at the lever, wrenching it down. A resonant thunk shook the throne room, followed by a subterranean roar. The Night King's head snapped toward the sound. His grip slackened a hair. Enough. Jaime drove his golden fist forward, brass joints groaning, and struck Icehelm center mass. Pain vibrated up metal and bone alike, but the blow staggered the dead king half a step. Green fire flashed up the stairwell behind the Iron Throne, a bloom of liquid jade surging through cracks, devouring air. But as it reached the hall, it warped. The wildfire met a ceiling of invisible frost, and solidified mid-roar. Petrified fountains of emerald crystal, cascading but frozen mid-splash. Flames became statues, inert yet incandescent. Bathing pillars in ghost green glow. Heat died in an instant. Frost traced emerald shapes, glazing them milky opaque. Cersei stared, dumbstruck, at her betrayal. Wildfire would not burn. The Night King released Jaime, turned, and advanced on the Queen. Jaime forced breath back, staggered to feet that did not feel. He seized a jag of shattered Valyrian steel, Oathkeeper's broken tip, and lurched after. The blade fragment measured a bare forearm in length, edges serrated by fracture. His leg protested each step, but fear lanced him forward. Cersei backed toward the throne, skirts crackling as hem iced. Her foot caught upon a twisted blade of the chair. She stumbled, righted herself, glared with feral defiance. "You will not have my throne," she hissed. Her hand sought something at her hip, a small glass vial engraved with alchemist glyphs. She shattered it upon the Night King's breast as he neared. Ruby liquid, a concentrated wildfire jelly. Spattered. She struck flint. Sparks leapt. Nothing caught. The Night King's hand closed around her wrist. Frost raced along her arm, lacy and exquisite, turning flesh translucent. She shrieked, a sound Jaime had never heard from her, fright mirroring truth rather than fury. He flung himself forward and drove the ragged Valyrian shard at the Night King's nape. Dot. Metal met brittle resistance, then slid deeper with a crystalline crack. The shard bit halfway through icy spine. The Night King stiffened. Blue light pulsed through fracture lines, momentarily dimming. Jaime heaved, twisting, saw fractals spread like lightning across frozen armor. A fissure reached the crown. Split antlers of night. The Night King bent backward, half turning, and flung Jaime across the hall. He smashed against a column, vision speckled black. Within the same breath, the dead king returned to Cersei. His other hand seized her hair, lifting her till toes scraped marble. Frost crept across cheeks, eyes, tongue and golden threads whitened. Jaime coughed blood, tasting iron and regret. He clawed through rubble, seeking the shard. It lay yards distant, glowing faint sapphire now. He crawled. A thunderclap split the roof. Drogon's roar. Fire, true, living fire, poured through the sundered ceiling. A river of scarlet and gold smote Viserion's frost plume mid-air. The clash birthed a storm of shrieking steam. Scalding spray scoured the throne room, peeling frost from walls, cracking the glass wildfire statues, hurling whites across aisles. Drogon plunged talons through the roof, dashing rubble, wings beating gales that ignited torn cinders. Upon his spine Daenerys Targaryen rose in silhouette, silver hair whipping, eyes fierce. Rhaegal thundered overhead, banking to strafe the courtyard, torching undead ranks amassed below. Daenerys vaulted from Drogon's neck, even as the dragon landed astride the Iron Throne dais. She rolled across stone to crouch near Jaime. "Where is Jon?" she snapped. "He rides," Jaime rasped. "Somewhere behind your flames." His gaze flicked to Cersei, still locked in the Night King's grasp. Frost scales now armored her shoulders. Lips split where they tried to scream. Daenerys' eyes hardened. "Then this ends." She strode forward, Drogon's bulk looming. Flames licked his jaws. Searing marble. The Night King, without haste, lowered Cersei. Fingers loosened. The queen slumped, swaddled in ice, alive yet stilled. He faced Targaryen fire incarnate, a tableau of night against dawn. Daenerys drew a short Valyrian steel spear, gift of the Dothraki smiths, and pointed. "Dracarys." Drogon roared, expelling a torrent of dragonfire hotter than forges, bright with gold veins. The blaze engulfed the Night King, hammered him against the Iron Throne's back. Iron swords melted, rivulets of slag streamed, pooling like molten light. Flame cloaked all, a tornado of incandescent fury. Jaime shielded his face, hair singed though he lay yards away. Marble smoked, green wildfire crystals at last liquefied, feeding the inferno with sickly emerald tongues. Anvil thunder reverberated. When the deluge ceased, the room swam within a shimmering haze. Jaime blinked tears from scorched eyes. The Night King still stood. Armor glowed cherry through fissures, yet re-solidified as air cooled. Frost blossomed to quench steel before it dripped. A thin sheet of obsidian black ice had formed between him and fire. Solid enough to channel flame aside like a shield. Behind that screen, Daenerys glimpsed sapphire pupils, bright as ever. Her face drained of triumph. Drogon stalled, nostrils flaring confusion. The Night King stepped around his frozen barrier. In the same breath he flung his spear of dawn-forged ice. Drogon reared, but the spear pierced scale beneath wing. A scream like breaking mountains filled the throne room. Dragonfire sprayed uncontrolled, sweeping arcs that slagged pillars. Daenerys ducked beneath tongues that nearly claimed her. Drogon staggered, knocking half the ceiling away as he tried to regain purchase outside. Viserion struck then, dropping from cloud like a gargoyle of tombstone. He seized Drogon's wounded wing. Frost spread along sinew, stiffening membrane. Drogon lashed, but imbalance toppled both dragons through the breach, plummeting toward the courtyard in a cyclone of fire and ice. Daenerys lunged, catching a jagged edge of the ruined window as mountain foe tumbled beyond. She hung above the drop, knuckles blood raw. Dadai. Snow spun, mingling with cinders. Jaime crawled, seized her forearm, hauled. Together, they sprawled, amid rubble. Thunder rolled outside, Rhaegal's roar merging with the clash of armies and dragons. Daenerys rose, panting. She peered through the breach, saw Drogon crash into the frozen river beyond the walls, saw water shatter like glass, sending white fissures across its breadth. Viserion slammed down atop his brother, wings mantling. Frost pulse radiated. "No," she whispered. "No." Jaime caught her by the elbow. "Your Grace, the Queen, my sister, is dying. The Night King will finish all inside the keep. You must go." Daenerys shook off his grip, fury igniting. "I will not flee." She looked at what remained of Oathkeeper's broken shard on the floor. Only Valyrian steel can wound him, and dragonglass. Or fire, if it could reach his heart, Jaime said, despairing. Daenerys knelt, pried the hilt section of Oathkeeper from rubble, considered the jagged edge. She met Jaime's eyes. "Guide me to the dungeons. There was once Blackfire steel stored for Aegon." "Then?" "Lost centuries past," Jaime muttered. "Then we make do." She snapped the hilt across a block of ice, forming a shorter hand spear no longer than her forearm. "If this breaks, so be it." The Night King's boot descended the dais behind them, scraping molten iron that refroze under heel. His gaze swept the chaos. Fallen whites stirring to rise anew. Wildfire cauldrons half-thawed. Emerald fumes wreathing pillars. Cersei kneeled where he had left her, hair white with frost, lips blue, staring glassily at her city burning and freezing all at once. Jaime and Daenerys stood shoulder to shoulder, absurd pair. Kingslayer and Dragon Queen, each armed by broken remnants. The Night King raised his left hand, palm outward. The air whined, folding into a lance of ice that coalesced in his grip. At that moment, a roar thundered from the corridor behind. Jon Snow surged into the chamber, cloak streaming, Longclaw blazing faint. At his heels barreled Ghost, fur bristling with crystalline snow. Jon saw Daenerys, saw Jaime, saw the Night King between them and Cersei, and chose. He hurled himself at the dead king, swinging Longclaw overhead. Ghost flanked, fangs bared. The Night King parried Jon's first stroke with his conjured spear. Sparks sprayed where Valyrian met otherworld steel. Jon pressed close, hacking, thrusting. Jaime limped in, sweeping his broken shard low to distract. Daenerys circled, waiting opening. Ghost leapt, jaws seeking ice flesh. The Night King pivoted, skewered the direwolf through ribs with uncanny speed. Ghost yelped, white fur erupting in frost as he sailed past, tumbling across melted then frozen puddles. Jon roared, grief-fueling might. He beat the dead king back 3 paces. Each clash rang like anvils, showering blue sparks. Night King twisted, hooking spear under Jon's guard, wrenching sword aside, knocking Jon to knees. Daenerys dashed forward. She drove broken Oathkeeper toward the Night King's flank. He countered, free hand lashing out to seize her wrist mid-thrust. Bones cracked in her arm. She gasped, but held the shard. Jaime lunged from the other side, golden hand catching the Night King's spear shaft near midspan. For a heartbeat frozen steel burned brass. He yanked, dragging point away from Jon's chest. Jon thrust up with Longclaw. The blade pierced breastplate, at a seam created earlier by Jaime's first strike. Valyrian steel sank 2 inches, then stuck fast. Frost exploded outward. Jon's hands numbed instantly. The Night King hissed, a sound like glaciers calving. He released Daenerys, flinging her aside. She crashed into the Iron Throne, blades gouging her back. Jaime grappled the spear, wrenching. The dead king tore it free, clubbed Jaime with the haft. The Kingslayer fell unconscious. Jon struggled to twist Longclaw deeper, but fingertips lost sensation. The Night King backhanded him. Jon flew across the floor, skid to rest beside Ghost, cloak already crusting with ice. Daenerys staggered upright, bleeding from shredded shoulders. She saw Longclaw protruding, half embedded, frost cascading round it. The Night King grasped the sword hilt, intent on ripping it out. Blue flame lit along fissures. Before he could pull, Daenerys sprinted. Her broken shard, all that remained of Oathkeeper, gleamed in good hand. She vaulted a fallen beam, landed, and jammed the shard into the chasm of cracked armor at his throat, where Jon's blow had sprung seams. The jagged fragment sank to the grip. The Night King's eyes widened, blue luminescence flaring blinding white. Sound vacated the room. A pulse of force threw Daenerys backward. She slammed spine first into slagged throne metal, slid down. Sight blurring. In frozen stillness, the Night King reached to his neck, fingers exploring shard lodged to hilt. Cracks spidered outward, webbing his torso limbs. Light within flared hotter, brighter, then shifted hue from blue to white, to gold tinged by green wildfire reflection. Finally to a dull, flickering ember. Time resumed. A roar, half wind, half dragon, tore through the heavens. Outside, Viserion reeled mid-lunge, blue fire sputtering. Dragons across battlefield howled. The Night King looked to Daenerys. Some echo of memory lurked, and then cracked like thin ice. His form fissured in thousand planes. Pieces peeled away as leaf-thin shards, drifting downward in slow cascade. Where they touched floor, they burst to dust that steamed, not froze. When the last fragment dropped, Longclaw clanged to marble, whole but rhymed in whore. The spear dissolved to vapor, swirling away. And silence deeper than ever before enfolded the throne room. At once, across King's Landing, every white collapsed, strings cut. Hordes turned to snow heaps. A hush fell so sudden even the flames paused their licking. The frozen wildfire statues, relieved of the magic-suppressing heat, combusted. Columns of emerald blaze whooshed skyward. Heat stormed outward, shoving frost back in a tidal rush. Daenerys forced herself up. She staggered to Jon's side. His eyes fluttered open, meets hers. Searching, she smiled through tears rising steam from blood-slicked cheeks. Together, they looked to Jaime, stirring amid rubble, and to Cersei, frozen queen statue ringed by melting frostlace. Cracks ran through ice, encasing Cersei, but life remained. She blinked slowly, mouth parting, voice weak as reed. "Monster," she whispered, not sure at whom. Jaime crawled to her, heedless of seared palms. He pressed forehead against hers through thinning frost. "It's done," he said. Outside, Drogon erupted from river ice with triumphant shriek, Viserion's body disintegrating mid-air in blue motes, dispersing on a warming breeze. Rhaegal circled overhead, green fire lighting dawn. In the throne room, the Iron Throne lay molten ruin, twisted blades fused to slag puddles. Only one jagged, throne-shaped silhouette yet stood. The spire of crystallized wildfire, now cooling, reflecting sunrise in fractured emerald. Daenerys gazed upon it. Perhaps this is what it always deserved, she murmured. Jon gripped her hand. "We must still save the city from the fires below." "Tyrion will," she said, trusting the little lion to do what lions did best: navigate labyrinths and whine, snuff dangers she could not perceive. And so as bells rang anew, first in doubt, then in dawning celebration, the survivors stepped into a world unburdened of its ancient winter, yet unsure of spring. Dragon wings beat above, melting snow into rain, dousing green flames with hiss of life reclaimed. Dawn spread across Blackwater Bay, the ice shattering in glittering sheets, each fragment catching light like shards of a throne that would never rule again. Okay. Dawn uncoiled across King's Landing like a bruised serpent, violet fading to rose, then to pale, trembling gold that lit the ruin of the Red Keep in shards. Smoke hung low, stitched with coils of emerald where pockets of wildfire still seethed under shattered flagstones. A hush lingered, no shouting, no sobbing. Not yet. The city, stunned, held its breath as if waiting for some pronouncement, from gods or dragons, or the dead things that had vanished with the shattering of their king. Tyrion Lannister emerged first from the winding belly of the vaults. Soot streaked his cheeks, and his already wild hair stood in damp, matted tufts. A crude map was clutched in his fist, edges singed. He limped to the courtyard, squinting up through drifting cinders at the ragged silhouette of the keep. Fire danced along a breach where the throne room once boasted its highest parapet. Molten iron trickled over the masonry like black tears cooling to rust. Above, Rhaegal's dark green shape wheeled in widening spirals, as though unsure whether to land or flee from what he had helped destroy. Tyrion shaded his eyes and shouted, voice ragged, "Davos, bring more buckets. Pitch now, water later. The heat will reignite itself if the stone cracks again." Davos Seaworth answered from a half-submerged galley pulled into the frozen hush of Blackwater Bay. The ice sheet there had fractured under the dragon's descent. Splinters littered the water like powdered moonstone. Sailors scrambled along rope ladders, passing barrels of sand and wet sacking toward the shore. Davos' boots sank into a slushy crust as he trudged up the ramp, swearing at every step. "This is madness," he rasped at Tyrion when he reached the courtyard gate. "You can't smother wildfire with wet sails alone, and all the sand we've got wouldn't fill the small folk market." Tyrion's eyes glinted a weary amber. "Water's useless if the flames hide beneath the stone. We need to pull every remaining cache map we can find." Qyburn kept copies, but the damned maester fled when the roof came down. "See if any of his apprentices still breathe." "Benny." Davos' jaw tightened. "If they breathe, they'll be under rubble, or running for the harbor." He scanned the devastation. "Where's the queen?" "Inside." Tyrion tipped his chin at the yawning wound in the keep. "With Jon Snow and Jaime, trying to keep Cersei from turning this victory to ash." As if summoned, a deep groan rippled through the keep's innards, followed by the dull crump of a partial collapse. A plume of dust rolled from the shattered archway. Davos cursed and bolted forward. Tyrion, shorter legs pumping, kept pace at his side. They clambered through slag and broken shields until a faint orange glow revealed itself beneath a drooping ceiling beam. The throne room lay in upheaval, pillars cracked, icons of the faith strewn like children's dolls. In the center of the devastation, Daenerys knelt beside Jon, pressing a cloth to a split along his temple. Jaime, limping, braced himself against a toppled brazier, golden hand smoked by residual heat. Cersei, wrapped in a cloak of steaming white, crouched like a wounded bird at the foot of what remained of the Iron Throne, now a malformed stump half melted to glass. Tyrion sucked in a breath, the horror and relief mingling in equal measure. Alive, thank gods. Daenerys did not look up. Her once white cloak, splattered with blood and dust, stuck to her shoulders where small iron blades had nicked her skin. "Jon needs a maester," she said, voice level but raw. Tyrion looked toward Davos. "See that the Citadel's men are roused. Any still living." "Then?" Davos nodded and withdrew, boots crunching glass. Tyrion advanced 2 cautious steps. "My queen, the wildfire is still burning below the southern walls. If it breaches the ash pits, we'll lose the city." Daenerys dragged a sleeve across her cheek. "When Drogon returns, I will make a sweep. His fire can reforge stone and cut off air to the deeper tunnels. That may also crack the keep and dump the caches into the river," Tyrion countered gently. "We'll need to vent heat in stages." Jaime, wiping blood from his lip, snorted. "If the keep collapses, throne or no throne, nobody will sit a damn thing." He stretched, wincing as his ribs twanged. His eyes flicked to Cersei. "We need to clear the rest of the floors. Check the cellars. She built half this fortress on secrets." Cersei's frozen lashes trembled. She swallowed, trying to speak, but the frostbite lacing her throat made sound come out like the creak of a coffin hinge. Jaime eased across rubble, knelt in front of her. "I thought you were gone." "Almost," she rasped. "It's colder than I imagined." Jaime lowered his forehead to hers. "Stay warm. Stay alive. Let's salvage something from this ruin." Then hours passed in blur. The sun rose higher, scattering the last of Sothorius-hued smoke from the rooftops. People emerged from their hiding holes, bakers wielding paddles as weapons, septas in soiled robes, half-armored gold cloaks with cheeks peeling from frostbite. A hush of disbelief lay over every street. Some citizens knelt in prayer at the sight of Rhaegal roosting upon the massive statue of Baelor the Blessed, wings mantled like ivy across marble shoulders. Others wept wordlessly at mounds of kin collapsed mid-step, bodies of once familiar wights already thawing, limbs slack. No trace of the blue flame remained in their eyes. Instead, water pooled beneath lashes and ran as tears they had not been allowed to shed in death. In the dragon pit, a council gathered beneath scorched vaults. Davos drew charcoal lines on parchment atop an overturned wine cask, marking each known wildfire barrel's position. Tyrion produced Qyburn salvaged scrolls. Spider-like penmanship skittered across them, recording numbers, measurements, fused designs. Arya Stark appeared from nowhere at Tyrion's elbow, having ridden south with Gendry in Daenerys' vanguard. Her hair matted to her scalp. She tossed aside a wolf-head cloak caked in road dust. The fleet outside the bay is still encased in ice. Water around their hulls froze a span thick. Could take half a moon to free them, she reported. Tyrion rubbed his jaw. Half a moon during which every lord with a grievance can sail here and stake a claim in the confusion. He turned to Arya. Where is Sansa? Leaving White Harbor by road, I think, Arya said. She means to parley with the Queen. And Bran said, he has things to watch. Then, Tyrion shivered at that phrasing. Well, if he watches, let us hope he likes what he sees. Jaime barged in then, Cersei leaning on his arm. The assembly quieted. Cersei's lips were ashen but her gaze already clawed for advantage. This council meets without the rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms, she announced. Davos raised a brow. One queen's already here. Two, Arya concurred coolly. Cersei's nostrils flared. A foreign invader and a northern usurper do not dethrone legitimacy. Jaime sighed. The dead just tried to crown themselves eternal kings. Cersei, perhaps set aside your claim until we bury the corpses. Where you see burial, I see bargaining chips. She gestured to the city outside. Half these people still swear to the Lion. Offer them stability, and they'll reward mercy. Tyrion looked at her the way one might test a bear trap for rust. Mercy must begin somewhere. You'll answer for the Sept, for Ned Stark, for all that wildfire sleeping under their beds. Cersei's chin trembled as if with suppressed laughter. My little brother thinks I fear judgment? Fear might serve you at last. But Tyrion's voice lacked venom. He turned to Daenerys, who had remained silent at the aperture's edge, watching clouds drift. Your Grace, the realm awaits your decree. Daenerys faced them. Fury had retreated from her features, replaced by a resolve as pale and unforgiving as bone. My decree is simple. We rebuild. We root out every ounce of the dead king's frost left in the walls. We purge wildfire safely. We feed people who lost cellars and kin. And we gather every maester south of the neck to study what has transpired, because somewhere further north may lie answers we still need. Then? A murmur spread. Davos cleared his throat. And who rules the city while we mop up? Daenerys met Jon's eyes. He leaned on a spear haft like a cane, brow bandaged, ghost pressed warm against his knee. Let the council rule for now. Whoever sits a throne next will want a kingdom worth sitting. Cersei bared pearly teeth. Not a throne at all by looks of it. Daenerys' gaze flicked toward the melted stump behind them. Perhaps no throne is needed. Only standing stones to remember our dead and living hearts to lead the rest. Then, Tyrion, touched by some wry impulse, bowed. Then allow your hand to propose the first order. We must extinguish every wildfire pocket. The Citadel's archmaesters always feared misfires in warps of stone. Now the stone is warped beyond nightmares. And we will need grain. Davos traced caravan routes. Rain squall to the north saw decent harvests. If winter truly breaks, maybe we can coax seed from the summer fields of the Reach. Arya folded arms. You'll need safe roads. Wights in caves might still stir, if the Night King's magic lingers. Then Samor. Daenerys nodded to her. Then you will scout. Take what rangers you trust. Ride as far as Ruby Ford. See if the trident thaws. Jon straightened, wincing at the tug in his brow. "I'll go with her." Daenerys gripped his hand. "You need rest." He squeezed back, smiling faintly. "I need to see that all is truly done. And Ghost would rather run than pace castle yards." Jaime stepped away from Cersei's side. "A northbound party will be safer with knights, and one fewer Lannister in the city might ease tensions." He laid a palm over his golden prosthesis. "I'll escort them as far as Harrenhal." Cersei bristled. "Abandon me once more?" Jaime looked pained. "I will return. I always do." But Cersei's gaze tracked every departure plan like a lioness counting cubs, and found only the cage of her own making. She drew her shredded cloak tighter. "Do what you will. The capital will endure." Bah! The days that followed blurred into a new season made of contradictions. Fires smoldered alongside snowbanks. Roses bloomed in gardens abutting blackened streets. And the Citadel's ravens arrived side by side, with carrion crows fat from feasting on thawing whites. Volunteers tunneled into collapsed corridors, barking orders and prayers over the hiss of cooling slag. Wildfire caches, once buried deep to hide Mad King obsessions, now lay half-exposed like rotten teeth. Davos personally oversaw crews, stacking damp sandbags around each fragile emerald vessel. There were accidents. One kettle, cracked by falling masonry, belched green vapor that set a watchman's cloak ablaze. He flung himself into a horse trough and survived, though his beard never grew again. Tyrion led scribes through piles of burnt ledgers, drafting an inventory of lives lost. No one could tally exactly how many whites had breached the walls, only how many corpses remained after dawn. They piled them outside the charcoal square, built pyres taller than the sept had been, and Daenerys herself lit them with Drogon's tempered breath. Each dusk, a hush followed the pyre hour. Citizens gathered on balconies to watch smoke ascend, merging with thin streaks of cloud curling eastward like ink in milk. Mothers held children who still sniffled from grief and cold, recounting tales of the men and women who ended a night too ancient to name. When the dragons coasted overhead, no one flinched. Instead, cheers rose, fragile but genuine, echoing across rooftops. Jon and Arya rode north on the fifth morning, accompanied by Jaime, Gendry, and 20 trusted outriders. Some unsullied veterans, others Stormlander scouts, led by Edric Storm. Ghost loped ahead, his paws silent on the still-chilled road. Meltwater trickled in ditches, but icy rime lingered on shady slopes. Twice they found small packs of whites lying inert, eyes dull. Arya severed their heads to be sure. At each site, Jon pounded an iron stake bearing the direwolf sigil, marking them for burning crews to follow. Harrenhal loomed by the second week, its towers warped by dragonfire from an age long past, now dusted in crystalline sheens that sparkled where Viserion's frost had swept southward. Jaime stared up at the twisted towers as if confronting ghosts older than his family. "Every ruin in this realm tells us dragons and magic should stay myths," he observed, "but with no malice." Jon shrugged inside a fur cloak. "Perhaps myths are warnings as much as threats." Within Harrenhal's cavernous hall, they found a garrison of black-cloaked strangers. Night's Watch veterans who had trekked south once word of the wall's irrelevance became rumor. Their commander, Cotter Pike, saluted when Jon entered. "Lord Commander no more, I reckon," he said with a black iron grin. "Commander of survivors, maybe," Jon replied. They clasped arms. That night, by torch, they reviewed the Watch's dwindling numbers. Most castles along the wall lay empty. Eastwatch's survivors, those not taken by the sea ice, were streaming south. The new question hung heavy. What did a Night's Watch guard now? Arya eavesdropped from a window-slit stairwell, idly flipping a Valyrian dagger between fingers. Jaime stood beside her. "They'll need a new purpose," she murmured. "We all do," Jaime said. Moonlight silvered his unshaven jaw. He glanced at Arya's blade. "Mind tossing that thing fewer times around my ribs?" Arya caught it mid-twirl, smirking. "Old habits." Gendry cramped beside a brazier forging fresh spearheads from salvaged steel. Jaime watched sparks bloom. "You care for her," he said softly. Gendry hammered twice before answering. She's steel and wind. Hard to care for something that cuts you first. Some wounds are worth wearing, Jaime mused. Just keep your helm on. Gendry barked a laugh, wiping sweat. I'll forge you one too, Kingslayer. Old wounds need new metal. Then shall sell. In King's Landing, Daenerys mounted Rhaegal each dawn to oversee the ring of ash pits carved around the wildfire caches. She kept Drogon grounded while his wing healed, but his ire simmered. Sometimes at sunset, he rose on stunted arcs, venting frustration in plumes that evaporated before touching rooftops. The city folk dubbed him the Black Ember, terrifying yet protective. Tyrion established a tribunal to address Cersei's crimes. 2 archmaesters, 5 highborn lords, and 1 Dornish envoy took seats alongside the Hand. Evidence flooded in. Burned scrolls reassembled, witness accounts from surviving septons of the Sept of Baelor. Yet each night, Tyrion paced his chambers, uneasy. He feared that executing Cersei would breed a legacy of martyrdom the realm might never heal from. But sparing her risked revolt from those who wanted Lannister blood for every child buried under green fire. One evening, as pale moonlight spilled across charred oak desks, Cersei herself broke the stalemate. She requested a private audience with Daenerys, Jaime, and Tyrion. They met in Maegor's little tower, a chamber untouched by collapse. Cersei wore a simple black gown. Her golden hair, once her pride, had been shorn shoulder short where frostbite had claimed strands. She looked smaller somehow, but no less formidable. I will not kneel, she began, voice husky from damaged cords. But I will accept exile. Tyrion's brow furrowed. Ain, Tau. Send me across the narrow sea. She lifted her chin. Take my title, my armies, what remains of them. Let me vanish. The people need no public spectacle of blood to heal. They need bread and someone to blame no longer in sight. Dem da winter. Jaime frowned. You would leave? It is that or a noose, she said. And I will not give these dogs my neck. Daenerys studied her. A stillness crept into the room, as if dragons perched unseen upon the rafters. Where would you go? Somewhere no one remembers the lion. Essos is large. Tyrion paced 3 steps. An exile can scheme. I will sign any oath, she said. Strip me of claim. Any children I might bear will forfeit rights. I will never set foot in Westeros again. Jaime's shoulders eased. Sadness weighed his gaze. Perhaps this is mercy for us all. Tyrion met his sister's eye. For the first time he saw not towering arrogance but fatigue. If the council agrees, he said slowly, you will sail on the first merchantman freed from ice. Under guard, of course. Cersei inclined her head. Oh, of course. Then she looked at Jaime. An unspoken plea. He nodded. In that narrow gesture, decades of tangled love and hate folded into a single hushed farewell. Far north, beneath tangled boughs near the ruins of the Night Fort, Bran Stark sat with eyes rolled white. Ravens perched along the skeleton of a weirwood root, sprung from the earth like a bleached serpent, their murmurs syncopated with the distant crash of thawing ice along ghostly shores. Bran's spirit soared across a land awakening, frost sheeting away from ridges, pines weeping sap into softening earth, lakes breathing steam where cracks bled warmth from deep springs. Yet amid thaw he sensed scars, veins of indigo shadow left by the Night King's passing. In forgotten hollows far beneath the frost fangs, dormant hearts of ice still beat faintly. Bran drifted deeper, crossing veins of silver ore, strata of ancient shale. There, anchored in darkness, pulsed a black star the size of a man's fist, a shard of the Night King's first forge. It beat once, and Bran reeled. The pulse rippled outward, faint but certain. The magic was wounded, not slain. The others had been bound to his will, but the wellspring remained hidden. Destroying the Night King had shattered his conduit, yet here still hummed the source, waiting for a new shape to fill the void. Bran withdrew, heart pounding in his chest of flesh. He exhaled, frost white despite the warming air. A raven croaked above him. Bran blinked, whispering to the bird in some language older than first men, then slumped, exhausted. "We are not finished," he murmured. Mira Reed, leaning on a spear nearby, stepped forward. "What did you see?" "Seeds," Bran whispered. "Some seeds only bloom when burned." Mira's fingers tightened round the shaft. "Then we keep watch." Bran's gaze shifted to the horizon where dawn would soon paint the sky. "Send word to Winterfell. Tell my sister to keep the fires lit." Near Maidenpool, Arya guided her party down a slope where thong ponds reflected pearlescent twilight. They came upon a shallow valley carpeted with brittle icicle shards, the remnants of what had once been a white encampment at the moment of the Night King's fall. Bones lay fused with armor, rust blooming across the snow like iron flowers. Jaime dismounted, crunching toward a sunken helm bearing the sigil of House Mouton. He knelt, brushed frost away, and looked toward Arya. "We bury what we can." Edric Storm's men set to work with shovels. Ghost patrolled the perimeter, nose twitching through scents of rot and melted fear. As the first earthen mounds rose, a hush settled. Arya pressed her palm to cold dirt. "Sleep now," she whispered, half to herself. That night, they camped under a sky spangled with unfamiliar stars, patterns long masked by winter's curtain. From Harrenhal's shadowed flank, a column of sparks spiraled upward where blacksmiths forged new arrowheads from melted white blades. Jaime watched spark showers and found a sense of purpose in orange embers. "Steel for spring," he muttered. Arya approached him, dropping to a crouch. She offered a sliver of salted hair. "You fought well," she said. He smiled wearily. "High praise from the girl who killed the dead once before." She shrugged, chewing. "We all did our part." She studied the stump of Jaime's right hand. "Does it ache?" "Ghost pains at times," he admitted. "Strange how something gone can still hurt." Arya nodded, eyes shadowed. "I have ghosts too." Wind tugged stray strands of her hair. "Make yourself useful tomorrow. Rhaegal's scouting the neck. If he finds survivors trapped in bog villages, we'll need swift riders." "Riders I can manage," he said, then hesitated. "What of Jon and you when all this ends?" Her gaze slid to the fire where Jon sat alone, sharpening Longclaw. Sparks danced across his scarred cheek. "Hell keep watch for threats no one else sees," she said softly. "I'll go where paths are narrow, maybe across the sea." Jaime frowned. "Across?" "Bravos whispers," she said. "There are debts unpaid, names yet unspoken." Jaime rubbed his jaw. "Be careful. Oceans hide bigger wolves than any lord's daughter." She smirked. "I'm not a wolf only." She rose and melted into darkness. In King's Landing, the first seeds of governance sprouted. Daenerys convened an open forum upon the Hill of Rhaenys. Anyone could attend, voice grievances, request bread. It was chaotic, loud, rife with confrontation, but it stitched a new fabric from the old city's shredded loyalties. Tyrion stood beside her, a ledger in place of a sword, counting promises and ration sacks. Varys, whose absence had spelled distrust years earlier, was gone, but new whispers traveled in his absence. This time, not of conspiracies, but of songs praising dragon mercy. One dusk, as braziers fired across the city's terraces, Daenerys ascended the step of the melted throne. She gazed upon the fused mass of iron, once symbol of conquest, now a cautionary relic. Children played at its base, daring each other to touch the twisted metal and claim themselves ghost kings. She knelt, brushed dust from a blade tip jutting like a thorn. Embers of sunset made it glow crimson. Jon climbed the ruin and sat beside her. "They'll remember this as the day the throne fell." She smiled faintly. "And the day a king abdicated before he could be crowned." Her eyes studied his bandaged brow. "Does it ache?" "A little," he admitted. "The scar reminds me of what we almost lost. Scars remind us to guard what remains." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Tell me truth, Jon Snow. Do you regret coming south?" "Mems," He thought of Ghost running across meadows no longer iced, of Davos laughing over a keg after saving half the city, of Bran's messages carried by ravens heavy with foreboding. Sometimes, he said. But then I remember winter. True winter. And I know this is only the first thaw. She drew breath, tasting ash and sea salt on the evening air. Then let's make certain we plant more than we burn. Cersei's exile ship weighed anchor on the first clear morning of spring. The vessel, an unremarkable cog rechristened Ember's Kiss, bore no colors. Tyrion and Jaime watched from the quay as its single-patched sail bellied against wind. Cersei stood at the stern rail, hair wrapped in a dark scarf, back ramrod straight. She did not look at the brothers, not once, as the tide pulled her away. Jaime raised a hand in farewell. She raised none in return. Tyrion exhaled shakily. May the winds treat her kindly, or not, as they see fit. Jaime's eyes stayed on the shrinking silhouette. She will find a way to live, even if her only companion is her own revenge, Tyrion said. A gull cawed overhead. He turned toward the city. Come, brother. We have a realm to polish. Bran's raven arrived at King's Landing on Dragonback. Rhaegal delivered it himself, swooping low until Daenerys plucked the black bird from the sky. The message tied to its leg bore northern runes, simple but potent. Ice remains below. Fire must guard above. Daenerys gathered lords and maesters that night. The breach at winter is mended, she said, but the wound runs deep. We shall establish dragon posts at each quarter of the realm. Dragons flew once over every holdfast when Aegon united the kingdoms. They will do so again, not as conquerors but as wardens. Tyrion raised a brow. We have 2 dragons capable of flight, he reminded her. 2 is enough for now. Her gaze swept the room. And perhaps in time we'll raise more. A hush followed, tinged with awe and dread. Across Westeros, tales already spread of dragon eggs hidden in forgotten vales, of stone spheres in the crypts of fallen castles. Some whispered the Blackwoods paid tribute in a clutch of rumored obsidian eggs kept generation to generation. Others claimed the wind-swept Skagos cliffs still nursed a wild brood. Myth dulled fear into hope. Jon listened, saying little. When the meeting adjourned, he found himself wandering the silent gardens where snowdrops had survived the devastation. He knelt, fingered a petal, cool as early frost yet vibrant. Footsteps crunched behind him. Sansa stood wrapped in a silver cloak, eyes solemn but bright. I thought you'd still be upon the King's Road, Jon said, standing. I rode through the night. She touched his healed brow. Word reached Winterfell of your survival. I had to see. Then, they walked under broken arches where ivy dangled. Jon briefed her on Bran's warning. Sansa listened, tension tightening her shoulders. We can never forget winter, she said. But we can teach the South to fear it properly. Jon nodded. Will you stay and help rule? Sansa looked toward the faint hum of the city markets below. I will aid the council, but the North needs its lady. Spring planting will falter without guidance. Her gaze softened. We are all changed, Jon. Perhaps we can stay bound without being chained. He pulled her into a hug. The pack survives, he whispered, and felt her nod against his shoulder. Weeks turned to a month. Shoots of green burst from blackened cracks in the pavement, near the Red Keep, where seed blown from the Reach found purchase. The city's children hunted shards of the Iron Throne like treasures, trading them for sweet cakes. Maesters collected handfuls of the fused metal, melting it into amulets believed to protect against eternal night. Tyrion chuckled when he caught a peddler selling one such charm. If only trinkets could hold back winter, he mused. A rider arrived from Braavos bearing a sealed letter for Arya. She read it, face unreadable, then rolled the parchment and tucked it inside her boot. Gendry caught her packing saddlebags in the courtyard. Leaving already? She nodded, tightening the straps on her mare. There's something across the sea. A list unfinished. Gendry swallowed. Will you come back? I never stay anywhere long. She placed a hand on his chest. But rivers sometimes meet again. He kissed her brow. She smiled, mounted, and was gone before morning dew dried. Jamie watched from a balcony. I suppose some ghosts travel better than others, he said to no one. In the dragon pit, Daenerys and Jon stood before a freshly laid clutch of dragon eggs. 3 ovals the size of a man's skull, deep onyx marbled with veins of red, green, and a pulsing silver invisible, unless touched by moonlight. The eggs rested in a charcoal nest, warmed by embers tended day and night. Drogon, wing bound with healing sinew, watched through half-lidded eyes. Rhaegal perched above, vocalizing a low thrumming that vibrated stone. Daenerys brushed her palm over the central egg. These were found in the crypts of Summerhall, sealed behind collapsed brick. Perhaps Aerys hid them after all. Jon rested a hand over hers. Now we guard them. Not we, she corrected gently. All of Westeros guards them. He smiled. Then let's start by teaching every child what a dragon truly is. Fire that can light the dark, not burn the innocent. A distant horn reverberated. Davos signaling the final wildfire cache had been neutralized. Tyrion soon arrived, cloak streaked in soot. The city is safe, he announced, voice hoarse but jubilant. Or as safe as King's Landing can ever be. Cheers erupted from the ramparts, echoing across the pit. Daenerys turned to Jon, to Tyrion, to the dragons looming like living monuments against dawn's blush. Then dawn begins, she whispered. Yet far beyond rivers and hamlets, deep in the ancient heart of the Frostfang Mountains, the Black Star pulsed a second time. Stone melted into glass. Ice reknit bone dad-eye. In a chamber sealed away since the dawn of fairy tale nightmares, a figure stirred. No crown, no memory, but cold purpose seeping into flesh unformed. Where empty eyes opened, no blue light shone. Instead, a faint violet glow ignited, flickering like sorcery recalled from long exile. The heartbeat quickened. In King's Landing, Bran's raven crashed into the dragon pit, dead before it struck earth. Feathers smoldered at the shaft of a quarrel, tipped with dragon glass as black as midnight. Jon knelt beside the bird, jaw tightening. Someone knows, he muttered. Daenerys joined him. The dragons rustled, uneasy. She withdrew the quarrel, studying fletching-dyed Tyrell green. The game, it seems, survives its board. Tyrion arrived, reading doom in their expressions. Shall I ready quills or swords? Both, Daenerys said quietly. Spring had come, but spring was not peace. The wall no longer kept wolves from lambs, nor winter from blooming fields. Old powers stirred in deep places, testing the void left by a king of night. And in King's Landing, under a sky cut by dragon wings and rising banners of rebuilt houses, the heirs of fire and ice prepared not for rule alone, but for vigilance eternal, until the last vestiges of darkness found no shadows left to claim.